Well done, Sheikh. Once again, good morning, everybody. It's a wonderful gathering here. We're going to start with the first fun panel today. I have with me four really very distinguished panelists whom we're going to interact with. The session, the plenary description, thank you. Is that better now? The plenary description is sound ethical principles and cultural values are the cornerstone of leadership in the Gulf region. Is this being applied meaningfully across the region's private sector business? There are three basic questions, and this is the first. How do we translate these values to enhance our region's business competitiveness in an increasingly globalized and fast-moving market? And what is the outlook for the sustainable competitiveness of our regional economy if we get this right? This is all about what we're going to try and do in this panel is to connect business integrity, ethics, to value creation within our businesses, to creation of value with our general economy, as well as benefits to society, one of which has been cited and is really important, of course, is job creation, the aspect that we need very badly actually across the world, but especially in our region here. So I will start our discussion with some questions that I've prepared for our panelists. I'll start off with Hussain. Enabling investment, Hussain, and more engagement by the private sector is clearly key to enhancing economic growth and increasing the current rate of vitally needed job creation, what we've been talking about, which obviously needs to be productive job creation to be sustainable. And as I think Badr mentioned, it's not enough, and we can't expect or keep expecting governments to create jobs. They're already overinflated. But the responsibility falls on the private sector. So what interaction is required by the various stakeholders in this chain to achieve this goal while ensuring the region's sustainable economic growth and global competitiveness? All these factors are intertwined and go to what we call obviously sustainability. So that's the question I put to you, Hussain.
Sure.
Bit of a mouthful.
It's a mouthful. I think investment and job creations definitely go hand in hand. As we have heard this morning, government alone cannot do it. Private sector alone cannot do it either. And I think Sir Mark mentioned the third part of this is the civil society. So they all need to work hand in hand. You need to encourage investment for people to invest. To encourage investment, you need to have a proper framework, legal framework, proper corporate governance, proper accountability. You need to build proper infrastructure, logistic structure in order to attract investment. To attract investment, to create jobs. To create jobs, I think you need a set of important issues. For me, by far the most will be education. We need to have the educational institutes, universities, schools, technical institutes to adopt curriculum to match job requirements. The world is changing. The world is a very competitive one. The skill sets you and I used to learn when we were early in school is definitely different today. To attract people to work or to encourage people to work, to hire, you need to make sure their skills are what they need. I cannot hire today somebody who doesn't speak English or has no knowledge of IT. In this society, you need that skill set today. Different economies need different skill sets. In this country, for example, I live in Abu Dhabi. The requirement in the Abu Dhabi economy is different that from the requirement in the Dubai economy. Dubai economy is a service-oriented economy, and therefore the skill sets needed with service economy is different. That is what's needed in Abu Dhabi economy, being an oil and gas and an industry economy. In Abu Dhabi, we need more technical skill set. For example, that's why, for example, you see in Abu Dhabi, there are about 10,000 students today in the technical institutes geared up toward that requirement. So the key, in my opinion, to create jobs is to encourage investment by easing laws and creating incentives, and by allowing the education system to be changed to produce more skill sets needed for the investors to hire. But definitely, we see changes in that. Today there are almost 1 million students in UAE. There are over 50,000 in universities. We need to encourage them to learn the new sets. I see here there are a lot of young ladies. We need to empower women. That's another important aspect for our skill set building. Thank you. I'm a strong believer in women roles, by the way.
I wish I had said that.
But on the other hand, I think, Hamid, also, when we talk about the private sector, it's public listed company, it's family businesses, it is the small and medium enterprises. They also help to create business. Changing hat, I happen to be chairman of Sheikh Khalifa Fund for support of SME. And I can tell you, we have, over the last few years, we have created more than 1,000 projects, but more importantly, we've created more than 3,000 jobs. So the small enterprise have a role. Civil society have a role. Everyone has a role. We have to work hand in hand to be able to find job opportunities for the youth in particular. If you look, Badr mentioned about 3 million people coming into the Gulf looking for jobs. If you go beyond the Gulf and look at the Arab world, it's a very challenging situation. The unemployment among the youth only is almost 30%. That is scary. So we need to work hard to find jobs for people, but more importantly, we need to be encouraged to invest to create jobs. So investment and job creation really go hand in hand.
That's very good points that you make, Hussain. The vital need for job creation and how to create jobs. What are the interactions between the various stakeholders? We're talking about business and government regulation, as well as the educational aspect, to how they intertwine to create the perpetual motion machine that Her Excellency Reem al-Hashimi talked about. I'd like to move to ask Sheikh Hanadi a question. I know your favorite subject about SMEs. That's something that Badr actually mentioned and Sir Mark also mentioned. SMEs are fundamental to the prospects of sustainable or for sustainable competitiveness and job creation in our region. That's a given. Indeed, also the most important driver for job creation, judging by experience around the world. How do we balance the need for SME innovation and development with the potential burden of regulation? So Mark mentioned and talked about regulation. Obviously, we need regulation, but how are the two apparently conflicting aspects, can they be effectively managed?
Thank you very much for this question. Let me start off by saying that it's difficult for me to speak about SMEs when I have one of the most successful stories in promoting SMEs, the chairman of the Khalifa Fund sitting next to me. I really congratulate you on such a beacon of success within not only our region, but the world as a whole in the successes you've achieved on the Khalifa Fund. And this is actually towards our youth. This is for the benefit of our youth. I think you've spoken about job creation as if something we need to prepare for our youth. Within SMEs, if we open up the area of SMEs, youth are the job creators. They're creating jobs for themselves, they're creating jobs for others. Now, it's not only an aspect of job creation. If we're speaking about the competitiveness of our region, we're trying to forecast how will the world or our markets react in 10 to 20 years. Who better to forecast this than the people really on the bottom of it, understanding how the market works, innovating new solutions for problems, from aspects, providing new services. This is where SMEs comes from. So it's job creation, it's innovation, and sometimes it's disruptive innovation that says that, look, this sector that we are predominantly thinking about as an economy will not exist in the next 10 years. This will cease to exist. We, as the younger generation, equipped with the skills and knowledge that we have, we're going into the knowledge, IT sector. I don't know what will be coming up next within that. So it's more than just job creation. Now, bringing up regulations, I go back to a word that Sir Mark used, a framework of regulations. This is where the fine line exists. Are we going to go into progressive policies that will progress our economy, or go into regulation that actually, create obstacles on every aspect of business making? We in the Arab world are very happy to say we are still one of the economies that have licensing for every sector. We require this and that from an SME to provide us. It is said that creating an SME in one of the most productive markets costs higher than creating an SME in any South Asian country. So we're still far from getting there. We don't say that regulation is not important, but it should be a framework of regulation. And taking this into the perspective of the Pearl Initiative and using another word that Sir Mark used, I'm so sorry to keep, it's embedded values that are within the companies, small, medium, large family businesses, government-related industries. How do we embed these values and ethical behaviors in them? This doesn't come from putting a regulation that says you're restricted on doing that. On the contrary, you are promoting the flourishing of an informal sector that will never be under the regulators, and that corruption thrives in. So it's a dilemma. And how do we take this forward? It's through progressive policy and a public-private partnership with civil society as a very strong stakeholder in the matter as well, that can look at our future and say where our competitiveness lies.
Very good points. We'll address during our conversation how effectively we can encourage SMEs to thrive, how we in the more established business community can mentor this process, and how we can guide our governments and regulators to facilitate and remove the obstacles that currently evidently exist. I'll move to our next panelist, Eve. How is the concept of shared value or finding win-win outcomes for business and society, how are those applied in your business, Eve, at Nestle?
Thank you. I think the first time our chairman, Peter Brabeck, mentioned the notion of creating shared value in Davos, a lot of people thought it was a new initiative. And in fact, instead of being an initiative, he really explained that it was our way of doing business. And I think it resonates so much with what Her Excellency Rim Al-Hashimi and Sir Mark Moody have mentioned in terms of values and principles. It's not just what you do, it's how you do it. What are the values behind it? And I think for us it's essential because it's really a way to live up to our mission of enhancing people's quality of life. And the two foundations, the two building blocks that we see to creating shared value, first is compliance. And I think compliance is very much linked with values and with building trust. And this is the main reason why we have fully integrated the United Nations Global Compact guiding principles into our own Nestle business guiding principles. It's not a possibility. It has to be the foundation of how you are going to do what your mission is all about. And the second element is really about sustainability. There is a need to think and to act in terms of long-term and not just short-term. In many ways, Nestle tends to be looked at as a rather conservative, very Swiss company. I think the positive side of being a bit conservative and very Swiss is that we think very much about the long term, the generations to come. And I think that what we have done in terms of sustainability, generally speaking, has been really recognized when last year we scored highest in our industry in the Dow Jones sustainability category. And I think you can measure it. It's not just words, it's actions. And when you do work on your greenhouse gas emission and you reduce it by 40% over the past 10 years, that's something which is concrete. In terms of creating shared value, we have some specific interventions that we work around three key pillars. The first one is rural development. And this is where, for instance, we are engaged with more than 680,000 farmers to help them to have better crops, to have them to be able to come up with crops which have higher values, to help them to make sure that the way themselves contribute to the supply chain is uplifting the values of sustainability and compliance. We worked with more than 40,000 farmers with our cocoa plan, for instance. And this is something which is also linked not only on the quality of the product, on the transparency on how we source, but very much also linked to the labor environment, which is one of the guiding principles of the UN Global Compact principles. The second area after rural development is all about water. And water is very important, we know it, and the scarcity of water is one of the key elements and key concern for the future. There again, we do everything we can to reduce the consumption of water per ton of food we produce. 40% reduction since 2005. In terms of nutrition, which is the third pillar, we very much emphasize product reformulation. We have currently a campaign in the region which is called One Spoon Less, motivating people to use 1 spoon less of salt, of sugar, and of oil every day. Just 1 spoon less when you cook at home. We also emphasize the importance of labeling. We have our nutrition compass on every product in order to inform people about what they eat. We're also very much supporting the policies on marketing and advertising towards children, which we know is increasingly important because the lifestyle of the younger generation tends to be much more sitting, playing with screens, rather than exercising. And I think that one element behind nutrition we are very proud of on global basis is what we call the Nestlé Healthy Kids program, that in the Middle East we call Ajyal Salima. In 2010, we developed that program with the American University of Beirut. And over the past 5 years, we have been able to gather evidence-based information which shows that such a program, which aims at increasing the understanding of nutrition, eating more fruits, eating more vegetables, and having more exercise in your daily life, has shown that this program has evidence-based results which are positive. Which now, and we were very proud about it, has motivated the Lebanese government to put that program, Ajyal Salima, in the curriculum of the children between the age of 9 to 12. We have launched it also in Dubai. We are currently launching the program in Saudi Arabia. We have planned for Jordan and Oman. And we really hope that from Dubai we will expand into the whole UAE and we'll be able to continue into other countries in the greater Arabic region.
Yves, you talk about compliance, which is really a very important topic in terms of, or aspect of measuring how well we are doing. And that leads me into a question that I wanted to ask Jamal, which is, you know, as we operate in an increasingly competitive economic environment, what is the competitive advantage for those companies that, such as Nestlé, that exhibit and practice sound governance, principles and ethical values? Are we moving in the right direction generally? And would it be a good idea to devise a measurable system for effective application of ethical values in the same way, for example, as independent auditing of accounts, your area of expertise? This is a question that's been put to us at our discussion groups and the Pearl Initiative by our Vice Chairman, Riyad Sadat, very close to his heart.
I know that. Riyad is very much into that. Hamid, I mean, first of all, I would love to do an audit on ethics. This will give me more money, more fees. So if we can do it, that would be great. But to be frank with you, it's a bit difficult. Ethics and values could never be partially done. You either do them completely or you are dead. And there is no way that we can halfway to say, we have audited this company and they are halfly applying their principles and values. We can't do that. So my answer to your question is no. But what we need to do is exactly as we are doing today. Building this community that respect values and respect principles, and not to exhibit them on their website, but to practice them, to have them part of their DNA. Unless we do that, unless we change the culture, we change the thinking of the people to apply those principles, we will not be able to win in this competitive market. Today, I'm sure you do this, and every one of us does this. When he wants to enter into a contract with a third party, he goes and checks on that company. Is it safe for him to enter into contractual agreement with that company or not? Would that contract impact his reputation? Would that contract build a good name for him or not? So we are changing, we are moving from accepting doing business with anybody to doing business with those selected companies who will practice their values, who will share their values, who have total transparency of what they do, whom they are, what's their operation, how they invest their money, what their responsibility to their societies, and so on and so on. Today, if you look into the large companies in the world, and KPMG is one of them, you will see in every single country, we have our transparency report. And I encourage really every single company here in this room to start to have their own transparency report on the website. That will help us as business leaders to spread into the community the thoughts and the values of the transparency of sharing information.
Shouldn't that requirement, for example, or shouldn't that suggestion and advisability of, for every company to have a transparency report, should that not lead to a requirement up to a certain size of company, obviously without burdening SMEs? You know, a company as large as Nestle, other than, you know, you can preach internally, but you've devised, and banks have devised, and other companies have devised boxes they tick to measure. That's really the question.
No, I mean, the issue, I mean, I'm glad that you brought this up. The issue is not having to exhibit those values, to exhibit this. The issue, are you implementing them or not? Let's share one example. Last week, I'm sure all of you have seen that the UK banks lost 60% of their profits over the last 4 years in paying fines. And those 60% are £60 billion in paying fines. If they have applied those values, if they have listened and applied those frameworks of governance, if they have respected the regulators, I do agree with Sir Mark, we don't want to be over-regulated, but also when we are regulated, we as players in that market should apply those regulations and not try to cut corners. So if they have applied the values and the regulations and respected the regulations in different countries, they should have saved 60 billion pounds and spend them in their communities, pay them to the shareholders, pay them to the people, create new jobs, and so on.
The tragedy is that I suspect they're going to charge us a little bit more interest over the next 5 years to make up for it. But the good point. Sheikh Ainadi, would you like to comment on what we've been talking about in terms of
I'd like to comment on what Jamal just said. I think the issue of establishing your transparency report or creating an ethical code within a company, no matter how big or how small it is again, as Sir Mark said, only feasible towards its application. Are you applying it, and how are you applying it, and so on. But as well, you know, In some cases, it takes two to tango. So in some countries where the business climate is being over-regulated or being drawn up by the public sector, this is the only way that business is conducted. I was at London Business School, and a couple of professors showed a study on the actual rates of returns that have been achieved in less of a transparent with less transparent companies in corporate environments and with normal open markets. It was 11 folds more than can be achieved in more transparent open markets. So greed is there. You know, you're going to create this quick buck. It was the second slide on the sustainability of these businesses going forward, and you see them just disappearing within the second, third year, and the sustainability just goes out of, just removes them out of the market. So my point is that if we are over-regulating or emphasizing this requirements for codes from external issues, it doesn't happen. It has to be an internal decision from stakeholders. And again, the stakeholders, we do not thrive as a private sector without being under the overall auspices of the government. We do not thrive if our societies are not catered for by civil society institutions. So it's all the stakeholders that come together and establish a framework, but within every organization, no matter how small, even an SME can have a code of ethical conduct, and then you have the bigger family businesses where reputation is their code of conduct, but it has to be further put into place. Then the government-related agencies, and then as well the listed companies. So the whole economic sector needs to look at this.
To what extent then do you think, Hussain, education and instilling this aspect of ethical behavior in business can lead to societal benefits? To what extent can we really embed that in our youth at the educational stage? And at what stage of education? Primary school, secondary school, universities?
Before I answer your question, I want to come back to what Jamal said. I think ethics, value, and principle are, you either have it or you don't have it. So I totally agree with you there. You cannot go halfway through. But on the other hand, it's important, there is nothing called one size fits all. Each culture, each country, each company have different way of doing things. And we need to be careful here. We just cannot go overboard with saying, you know, the US did it, the UK did it, we should be doing it. Each culture and each country deal with it differently. You cannot treat a $1 billion company like you treat a $1 million company. There are things, the small mom and papa shops, as Hanadi earlier talked about, you cannot put that sets of regulation, of compliances for them to do. So long as their ethics, their values, their principle are there, which is the common denominator in any business you do. We come from an Islamic culture. By that culture, value, principle, integrity, and honesty is embedded in us. So education, coming back to your question, education is important, culture is important, religion is important. We need to promote that values, that principle, that integrity into our homes, our schools, and our work ethics. But come back to a main point. There is no one size fits all. We need to highlight that. We just cannot copy what other did elsewhere and say we're going to apply it.
Obviously, the culture and the environment of any place plays a vital role. What we're really talking about in the Pearl Initiative and is how those values, which, as you say, are known, really. Although I disagree with you that some of us don't have it, I think we all have it to some extent, or I should say to a large extent. But how then do you apply it, or how do we, as the business community, apply it then to benefit the businesses as well as society at large, really? This is the point. And Jamal, you mentioned it's like the DNA. Changing DNA takes ages. So we're looking for shortcuts.
Shortcut will never work. I can tell you. Don't go shortcut. I mean, Hamid, just two comments. I think why we are talking today about over-regulations. And I can tell you, we in our profession are really fed up of the over-regulations on everything.
So are we.
But the question why? Simply because we have lost direction on our values and our principles. If you go back to your father's books, I always sometimes look into his books, and he used to be a trader. He used to send goods to India on a piece of paper, and a letter comes from back to say we have transferred money with X person in his hand to deliver it to you. And I can tell you, in the old days, there was nothing to be called bad debts. And somebody did not honor the payment. Look at today. With all the regulations, the amount of the bad debts goes up and up. What we have lost, and what we are saying today, we have lost the knowledge of basic integrity, basic values, and the basic values come not at school only, it comes at the community. And here it comes the partnership between the civil societies, the government, and the businesses to rebuild those basic values in the community. We are not doing that. Basic values start at home, basic values start at school, basic values start at the mosque, basic values start at the church. We used to learn all that from our teachers, from our headmasters, from our parents, from the people in the community, the coach of the football team in the small community. Those have been the values, and those are the ones who used to teach us those values. Unfortunately, our communities, and this part of the world is one of them, we have lost all of that. It could be because of the globalization, but we have to rebuild it part of our DNA. If we don't do that, those regulations will every day be added, and people will find ways and means to bypass them.
Right. Eve, we're talking about how you encourage, as a large corporation, how does Neste mentor and incentivize your suppliers to adopt the ethical values that you as a corporation aspire to and apply?
You see, even before dealing with suppliers, we start dealing with our own people. And I think what I very much appreciate is the fact that everything starts at home. The notion and the word, the value which we talk most about is trust. And trust, we define it based on 4 pillars: respect, transparency, integrity, and quality. In our products, in the way we manufacture, in the way we deal with each other. And the each other is both with colleagues, with suppliers, with authorities. And I think the more we work on that notion of building trust, the more we work on sustainability. There is too much short-term nowadays. Quick fix. Let's just make quickly some profits. Doesn't matter tomorrow. You see, we talk about integrity and what is the scale or the level of integrity of an individual or a corporation. There is a saying which says there is no small breach of integrity. It's there or it's not there. And somebody said, in trying to define integrity, it's what you do when nobody is around. And I like this very much, because at the end, it sends you back to yourself, your own conduct, your own values. And the transparency is important because nobody is perfect, we can all fail. But as soon as you recognize you made a mistake, you acknowledge it, you are transparent about it. You apologize if it's needed, or you take corrective action. Because trust cannot be built if you are not, first of all, honest with yourself. Transparency is also, we have what we call Nestle and I within our organization. Every 18 months, every single employee has an opportunity in a confidential way to answer a questionnaire about different aspects of the organization, about leadership, about alignment in terms of business priorities, in terms of respect, in terms of work-life balance, and so on and so forth. And that transparency, not only we collect it, but after we spread the results on global basis, on regional basis, and within a country in each function and unit. And it's only by acknowledging again the areas where we are not yet as strong as we could be. With this transparency, we give an opportunity to everyone concerned to improve it.
Thank you, Yves. I'm conscious of the time limitation. I have a clock here that tells me how much time is left. I'm glad it's on this side because I'm looking towards you and I can't see it. The next thing we'd like to do is the fun part of voting. This time it's not on for holidays. We have 2 questions for the audience to vote on. If they can be, the first question can be put up on the screen. The sector with the greatest role, that's the statement. The sector with the greatest role in creating productive jobs in our region is one of 4 we would like you to choose from. 1, the private sector. 2, governments. 3, civil society. Or 4, all of the above equally. I think I'm allowed to vote too.
The key word here being productive. Productive.
أنا حطيت 4.
Oh, wow.
4.
Well, it's, I think I agree with number 1 because I voted number 1. But it's interesting that not much weight is being given to governments. I think that's rightly so. Government can encourage, and civil society is benefiting charities and so on. But really, the message, I suppose, in all of the above is that they all need to cooperate, and it's an interactive process. Let's have the second statement on the screen, please. The sector with the greatest role in creating sustainable economic development, sustainable economic development in our region. Again, the same four. Let's vote.
That's correct.
Again, I was right.
Come on.
Yes, obviously people believe that governments, and I think that's right, have the greatest role because they create the environment, the regulation, although hopefully not regulation that is too cumbersome, but at least the environment, the leadership that creates a sustainable economic development, so that, as Sheikh Hanadi said, to discourage, in a way, of businesses setting up for a quick kill and then they disappear overnight. Well, that's been fun. Thank you very much. I'd like to, we have 6 minutes or so to ask, I'd like to open questions to the floor to ask the panel, if I may. We have roving microphones. Who has the roving microphone? Oh, there we are, it's coming. The gentleman in the second row.
But he knows it all.
Would you please stand up and announce your name and affiliation if you like?
Saleh Hussain from Bahrain. I think that's enough, isn't it?
More than enough.
Not enough?
More than enough.
I just want to make a couple of comments on what I heard. In fact, thank you very much. You have enlightened us with a lot of issues. You talk, and you're right, ethics cannot be regulated. But also I hear that when you come, there is no one size fits all, but also we have to look at a company with 100 million, billion, or so many billions of capital, and one with only $1 million, and we have to look for the regulation. To me, I think we're still talking in a different word. We are living in the 21st century. We are looking around us here. Each and every job is represented with so many nationalities. They come from different parts of the world. So you cannot afford to have different regulation for different nationalities. Religion is something different, but business is another. We have to look at it this way. This one. Secondly, trying to put regulation, we always ignore one big fact. We are talking about people who actually put the regulations. There are no companies, there are no regulations that are meant to be like stone. They are all done by human beings. We fail always to make sure that our people are aware of these things and they have the right regulation to be able to put it in place. So the people, you have to start with people themselves before you talk about companies. The regulations are only a combination of the ideas of people, and we have to concentrate on that. So is the ethics. Ethics has to be part of the company. This is built around the people that actually have their ethics. Without that, if we have to look at our word or our GCC in isolation of the word, then we are talking about something different. The last thing I want to say also, we talk about the family. Is there really a family? Are we going to have home? What happens in what's happening in the world where there's no family? People, getting married and have children and they have no families. This is a factor, whether we like it or not. There will be more and more increase in the regulation because of these developments, because we are not in the 19th century, we are not in the 20th, we are on the 21st. So we need to respect that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jamal, would you like to comment on this statement rather than a question?
Well, first of all, Saleh is an author on corporate governance. He have got 12 or 15 books he have written over the last 15 years. So I could never disagree with him. But I want to say one thing, Saleh. We are not saying that we are not living in the 21st century. What I was saying specifically, and I think the others, is that there are basic values need to be applied, whether it is on a $1 million company or a $100 billion company. Those basic values that we are asking for, unfortunately, are not there today. And therefore, we are saying to start really to build the DNA, we need to have those values in our community. That was it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
شكرا.
Question, please.
نعم. اسمح لي أن أتكلم باللغة الأم.
تفضل.
دكتور عماد سعد، رئيس تحرير شبكة بيئة أبو ظبي. لإنجاح هذه المبادرة نحتاج إلى 3 عناصر ومن ثم السؤال. العنصر الأول القانون، ومن ثم التوعية، ومن ثم التحفيز. أين موقع التحفيز من قبلكم كخبراء في تمكين المؤسسات سواء القطاع العام أم القطاع الخاص أن يلعب دورا أفضل لتحقيق أهداف هذه المبادرة؟ شكرا.
Thank you. It's a very good question. I'll paraphrase it in English. There are several factors. 3 were cited, legal, etc. But how do we incentivize? Where does incentivization come in? How do we incentivize the application of these principles which we all value and agree to? Hussain, would you like to comment?
How do we incentivize the?
How do we provide the incentives to apply the values that we are talking about?
I mean, again, values are there, and it's one set rule of values, the values, the principles, the integrities. Now, if you are a public listed company today in this country, there are regulations which will make you apply these values, whether you like it or not, because you need to comply, you need to follow, and if you don't, there are regulations to get you in trouble. So that doesn't need incentivization. It needs you have to apply, you have to apply. If it is a small company which is not obliged by law to fill in all kinds of applications and form, it is the cultural value embedded in them as individuals within their families, and I hope we will never reach a stage where we lose families. Families for us are very important, will always be very important, and if you live in this country and you don't believe in family, I'm sorry, go somewhere else. Family is very important. Yeah. So the incentivization for following this, if you are a small company which you are not obliged, is your culture and your values and your principles. So I think obviously there are always certain violations. As you said at the beginning, there are major banks who violated principle and ethics, and for this reason they were penalized. So it can happen. But I think it all comes back to what Jamal said, and I totally agree with him. It's the basic principle of values, whether you are a small business, a family business, a publicly listed company, or a government entity. It is that common denominator of values there.
Just one last question. We're almost through with time.
Hanadi want to comment.
So sorry, yeah.
No, absolutely no, please.
Please, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention one thing. Governance is taking care of yourself while taking care of the environment, making sure you're economically viable, as well as making sure that society flourishes. الأخ عماد spoke about القانون. I don't think law is that. I think an aspiration of a nation is. In Qatar, we established the strategy of Qatar 2030, which is to harmonize economic development and its impact on the social development, as well as looking at how do we save our environment and use resources in the right way. So if we take this as a strategy of a country and we implement it on our own companies, how do we establish our own profitability while working in a society that can benefit from us, while taking care of the environment on one side and making sure this is proper use of resources, I think this is the best governance that anyone would expect.
One last question. We're applying the empowerment of women principle
exactly.
now.
That's my question, actually. Thank you so much. Farah Al-Atasi, President of ACT Group International. My question is to Sheikh Hanadi and to Mr. AlNowais. Recent researches in the United States and even here in the GCC MENA region indicates that work ethic values, principles are more embraced and implemented by female workers in the labor market than male workers. Don't that really somehow give a drive for women to be more a decision maker, have more senior position rather than in administrative and marketing and other normal position? We would like to empower women to be decision maker in the labor market for embracing these ethics and work values that you're talking about. Thank you.
And I would just, if you allow me for me to answer
Yes, please do. Well, I'm
I'll
sure,
give you a life. I will give you a life example.
I'm sure Sheikh Hanadi agrees anyway.
I support her, but I'll give you a life example. I mentioned earlier I have the honor of being chairman of Sheikh Khalifa Fund. That organization, I'm proud to say, when we give loans, and we have given loans to more than 1,000 people, though it's interest-free loan, it's still a loan to be repaid. Women are always honor their commitment more than the men who receive loans. So I promise you they are... the second point, coming back to the same organization, out of the 8 top executive I have, 4 are women in leadership position. And last point, out of the 1,000 projects we funded, 1/3 are women. So we believe in women.
So that's a very good answer. And with this positive note, would you like to comment?
Please, if I may.
Yes.
I think what happened in Qatar and Emirates is that we're not empowering women. They're there. We've achieved it. They're up there. Look at the audience. Look at any level of society, of economy. It's already happened. We're not speaking about it. But as well, in the question of ethical background of men and women, I think it's more burdensome on women because we are mothers. We are the ones that install these ethical behaviors in our kids, no matter what gender they are, boys or girls.
Totally agree.
This is a great note to end this panel discussion with. I'd like to thank our panelists, Jamal, Eve, Hussain, and Sheikh Hanadi, and to thank the audience. And I'd like to clap to the audience.